You are listening to the Gentleman Scofflaw podcast. Listener beware.
Rise and shine, the liquor store is open. I ain't got time for moping. I best be on my way. Well, I still got time to save my reputation. Time to go day drinking in this dirty little town.
Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the Gentleman Scofflaw podcast, the show that is for the rebel and the Renaissance man, which we haven't said our slogan since our first episode, so I just figured I'd put that in there. And I'm your host, Jordan Crowder, and with me, as usual, in studio is Donovan Fowler, and from the Great White North is John G. Goodman. How are you guys doing?
Hi.
Good.
I'm back.
I'm good.
You're back?
And for the record, I'm the rebel.
You're the rebel without a cause?
Yeah.
I'm the Renaissance. Who's the Renaissance man? You, Jordan?
I guess, maybe.
He's the
What am
Renaissance and
I?
you're the man.
I'm the Scofflaw.
Yeah, you're the scofflaw that doesn't smoke or drink. Let's get a little housekeeping done here. What are you drinking there, Donovan?
I'm drinking a Murphy's stout, which is exploding in my hand because it was...
Keep it from the audio
It
mixer.
was in my, it was in my car. But yeah, nothing like a Murphy's, you know?
Yeah,
To Murphy.
to Murphy. What about you, John? What do you got there?
Donovan, try to contain yourself. I have an aromatic cherry Coke.
Oh, boy.
Oh, man.
Don't get too excited.
These callbacks are getting a little bit distant from... I don't even know if they're callbacks
For those
anymore.
of you who don't understand that callback,
It starts off funny, then it dips down where it's just it's getting old, but then it gets funny again in like a few more episodes.
Exactly.
it's just plain disturbing.
I think it's been referenced in every episode since the first one.
We just have to plow through.
All right. And I've got, as usual, well, not as usual, but I'm back to simpler times today because I'm a po man. I don't know why I said it
Simple
that way.
guy.
And with
Is that
me,
moonshine?
yeah, might as well be. No, it's actually like 6.2% or something for a,
For like a 350, like six pack for 350.
and you got your Batman cup there. That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Appropriate for this episode.
I'm pretty super too.
And I am smoking my Design Berlin Dublin pipe. It's a black Dublin-shaped rusticated pipe. It almost looks like a cross between a poker and a Dublin pipe.
Everybody knows what
I
those look
that
like.
one.
I can post a link to it in the show notes.
Just Google image it.
And I'm smoking some Sutliff's pumpkin spice, which was left over from last October.
That's I think statute of limitations on pumpkin is out. Is that the right word?
It's the basic bitch of tobacco.
Hey, does tobacco, pipe tobacco, does it go stale like cigarettes and cigars can dry out?
Well, it can if you
dry.
don't take care of it. Like, basically, if you put it in a sealed container, it's fine, like, for years. Some people open stuff that's, like, 30 years old, and as long as it was in a sealed container, it's fine. But, so a lot of people put it in jars, or if you didn't open, like, some of them open, like, tuna cans. If you didn't open it like that, it's still good for, some people actually age them. They cellar them and age them.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
There's a guy on YouTube, the military used to pack food in tuna cans like that.
Yeah.
He goes back to this food from the 1940s and 50s and eats it.
What's the
Really?
lead
On
content
camera.
on that stuff?
That can't be good
I
for
don't
you.
know. But I haven't checked in on him. I don't know if he's still with us. I was watching that stuff about a year ago. Who knows where he is now?
Right. Well, we have actually a pretty cool guest today that John found for us. Which John, I'll let you tell the listeners about it since you are the king of all things Jaws.
All right. His name is Matt Taylor, and he's the author of the book Jaws Memories from Martha's Vineyard. And it's all about the making of the movie in '75. There's a lot of photos that haven't been seen outside of this book before from people that were on the island and worked on the picture or were just around at the time it was made. And there's a lot of inside stories from all the locals. It's pretty cool stuff.
All right, that's gonna be fun.
Some say that little boy actually got eaten by a shark, and they just filmed it.
Yeah, I wouldn't
Steven
be
Spielberg's
surprised.
a pretty cold guy.
That's how it works in this industry. In Hollywood, they They
Throw
don't
you to the
give a-
sharks.
Oh,
The show must go on.
the show must go on. We had a little bit of complaints from listeners this last week about Donovan's mouth breathing.
What? They've made me wear a Breathe Right strip and wear a dunce cap as well. I wish they'd let me take the dunce cap off. But yeah, that was me. I won't deny it. I got a little too close to the mic and got burned. So I'm gonna just
stay away from it when you're not talking now.
I'm just gonna lean back from now on.
There you go. But then it takes you 0.5 seconds to get to it when I ask you a question. I don't know how I like that. How are you guys? How are you guys? You guys? How were your guys' weeks? What were you up to, John? Anything interesting happened to you?
Well, winter's officially over for this week, and the snow is melting, and that means that all the crazy old men in my neighborhood go outside and chop back the rocks off their lawn. People in southern climates may not understand this, but when we have a lot of snow and ice, we have these tractors that go by and spread gravel everywhere so it's not slippery.
Okay.
So a lot of that gets on your grass. Most people, you just rake, whatever, it goes into the earth. But these old guys, they get out on their hands and knees and they vacuum their lawn.
That's insane.
It must take a pretty powerful vacuum. It's like a shop vac or something.
That's it. They shop vacs and they, just go blunk.
Wow.
Blunk.
It seems like a monumental waste of time.
Yeah, I guess they don't like being in their house.
Well, when winter's over, you got to get as much sunlight as possible.
So maybe they have a good reason.
What was the deal this year? Did Punxsutawney Phil actually see his shadow, or what was?
Yeah.
Wait, who?
Punxsutawney Phil.
Who's this?
The rabbit in
gosh.
Idaho or something.
How do you not know?
that
Have you ever
sees
seen
shadow
Groundhog
and then
Day?
Yeah,
more winter
I
time.
just don't remember the
He's
names.
the groundhog that Bill Murray drives off a cliff with.
That's his name. Okay.
Oh wait, that's Thelma and Louise.
What about you, Donovan? What happened in your week?
Well, my week was pretty much. Well, it was pretty interesting. I went to an art show last weekend.
You at an art show?
Yeah, I'm very cultured.
What kind of art was it?
It was it was special art. I'll say that it was modern art with a bit of a twist. My friend, who shall go nameless, he invited me because he wanted me to help shoot it, and I was going to do sound on it. And I walk in, and there's just all these crazy, kind of eclectic but beautiful paintings all over the place. And I meet the artist, his old brother, who I'd never met before. And it's this, he's got autism and epilepsy. So this is sort of his outlet. And
interesting combination.
it is.
That's a lot to handle at once, I would think.
He's got a lot on his plate, but he puts it all on the canvas. And anyways, it was a good time. I have to say the news was there, and they were covering it. And I saw the caption that they put on the news story.
Uh-oh.
And I was like, gosh, what intern did they give this to? A special artist. So obviously, I mean, the kid's retarded.
That was
but
that was it. Just a special artist.
Yeah. It was just like, okay. Like, is this politically correct? I mean, I'm anti-PC, but it was like, who was in charge of this title?
It was Gene Shalit.
So, anyways, but yeah, it was a good time. Naturally, there was like no interviews or anything that needed to be done, so I didn't end up doing anything except for trolling the art gallery and trying to pick up chicks.
Yeah.
Great
that
tip.
go?
Great tip. Art galleries are a great place to find very nice, good-looking ladies, but didn't have much luck, actually.
Yeah.
I don't know what it was. I don't
Did
know
you
if it
not
was
speak their language of
rebellious.
artsy-fartsy?
I don't. I definitely didn't go there. It didn't help that I was wearing Bermuda shorts and a wife beater with a can of Budweiser. But hey, you like art? You what do you like about this painting here?
I like
Monet?
it too.
Did you at least buy a painting?
No. I tried to steal one. When I saw the price, I tried to take it off the wall. And I thought, maybe I could Etsy, maybe. But anyway, so the DP and I are walking around. For those of you who are in the film industry, that's director of photography, and we're walking around. I could have just said cameraman.
Yeah. You just had to be pretentious.
I know.
Little.
I was born this way.
Like talking down to the rest of us?
but so we're walking around and we're talking to various people, and there were these two sorority girls from USC who were there, and we talked to them for a good amount of time, and it was going pretty well, and I thought a pretty good chance of getting somebody's number, and my friend comes over to me about 10 minutes after, and he goes, "Hey, you were talking to those two sorority girls over there?" I was like, "Yeah." And then he was like, "Hey, they came back in and were like, hey, those two cameramen out there, the short one's kind of cute." Now, for those of you who can't see us, I'm 6'4", 6'5" on my best days, so I definitely wasn't the short one.
No.
Anyways, crash and burn. Get back up
it's
again.
better they didn't
Top
say
gun rules.
that the special one's really cute, and they were pointed in your direction.
Hey, is that the artist? That may or may not have happened. I don't know. I was telling some pretty bad jokes.
This is pretty fun. This week I ended up doing this, and John.
We didn't ask you. Oh,
Oh,
sorry, go ahead.
you son of a.
Nobody wants to know.
Well, this pertains to you, John, because over 10 years ago, we made this little indie movie called Bend and Break, which
I have
was
no recollection of that.
You're like Alice Cooper. You have no recollection of ever actually recording an album or
I'm
being
looking
in
at the poster right now.
And it's this really crappy little indie movie. It was the first movie I directed, but I did this podcast called The Circle Take where they interview directors about their first time making a feature film. And they've actually got some, other than me, they have some really cool guests on there. And I think it's going to be a pretty neat little show.
Wow.
Yeah.
I'll have to tune in.
Yeah. And then next week, or I guess in 2 weeks from now, on April 22nd, is the Big Shave West. And we'll be, it looks like I'll be doing a little, a panel discussion on wet shaving, which is seems kind of silly to me. But I guess I've kind of become an authority on it, having worked for doing videos for Art of Manliness on the subject.
In order to be on that panel, you have to be able to shave your entire body without a mirror. Is that correct?
Exactly.
With not a safety razor, a straight razor.
You have to shave your sack with a straight razor.
You ever see that?
Very carefully.
You ever see Crocodile Dundee?
Oh yeah.
There's a great part in that where he's shaving with like a regular razor, and he's been hired by this like American reporter lady to take her out into the bush and show her around, and she walks up on him and he immediately puts it in his belt line and then takes out the massive knife and just starts picking away at his face.
Oh man, I got to go back and watch that. Which segues into a new segment that we're going to do right now. Which let's go to it, guys. It's called Does It Hold Up?
Does it hold up?
Does it hold up? And this is this new segment where, speaking of Crocodile Dundee, is when we go back and experience things from our childhood and see if it holds up. It could be a movie. It could be some music. It could be some food. And this week, because Easter is coming up very soon, guys, I don't know if you guys have all your chocolate ready, but this week we are doing Peeps.
Peeps.
You got your Peeps, John?
All right. Well, here's the problem. I can't find them. I couldn't find them in any store, so I thought I'll chew on a piece of napkin I'm going to get the same attitude.
Hey, don't ruin it. Yeah, we got to experience it.
Everybody knows. Everybody knows that Justin Trudeau is very anti-peep. He's very pro-refugee, but very anti-peep. Doesn't like those chicks and bunnies in his country.
His answer to all the world's problems is to eliminate Peeps from the
well, you know,
from the stock of every store.
If the Peeps die, they win. Look that quote up; it's real. Okay,
right,
so
can
I'm
you get
opening
that
them up right
package
now.
open there?
Yeah,
All
they're,
right.
they're saran wrapped for freshness. Doesn't really matter though. Because
So
they could probably
let me describe the box you're opening. It's like half a box without any top, and then it's wrapped in saran wrap. And then,
I think a lot of people know.
well, you know, maybe people don't remember, or maybe it's changed since we were you know, little kids.
Maybe.
And
When did Peeps come about?
I don't know. We probably should look that up.
I'm going to look it up right now.
All right. And then inside, you decided to go with the blue ones because you know, Peeps weren't
I'm a
enough
man.
of chemical junk. You had to go with the blue dye, which they say is the worst.
I'm very gender specific when it comes to Peeps.
So looking at the package right now, they look like they're little bunny-shaped marshmallows.
I think they've been around since the 50s, to be honest.
50s.
First off, that's the biggest problem. Is
Yeah.
anything with marshmallow in it, it's just a filler. It's not real.
Yeah.
Empty calories.
Yeah. It's true. I think marshmallows. Excuse me, the simpler times is working its way up. I think that marshmallows are good if they're melted or toasted.
I think that needs to be an ad campaign. Excuse me, the simpler times.
Which I don't know how well.
I don't know how this is gonna work. Mixing
I'd buy
Peeps and
that for
simpler
$1.
times.
Peeps and simpler
This sounds
times.
like an urban legend.
It's like red vines and what is it? What's the combination?
It's well, I've mixed red vines and Dr. Pepper in there.
Yeah.
That's like the best straw you could ever have. But it's
Gin
Pop
and juice.
Rocks. Yeah, it's Pop Rocks and
Pop
soda.
Rocks and Coke.
Will make
yeah.
your stomach explode. I've debunked.
Is that-
I've done it.
It's another episode of Adam Ruins Everything. All right, so let's take a look at these here. You take one out of the package, and I shall take one out of the package.
Okay,
Oh, they're stuck together.
this seems
I'll
like
watch
a weird
intently.
ritual.
Yeah,
I haven't had one of these in a long time, actually.
I think
They used to end up in my Easter basket all the time.
I think the last time I had it was I was probably around 6 or 7, maybe. I don't know. It wasn't a common thing. All right, let's try this. So it looks like it's a marshmallow covered in blue sugar, and it looks like the eyes and nose of this look like they are oil stains from underneath my car
They do, yeah.
on
Actually, that is a
a
good point.
microscopic level. All right,
Okay, here we go.
All right.
You know, I'm not a scientist, but I think those things probably take a couple of days off your lives.
I bet. They take a couple of days to digest. They're tracer food.
Is it just me, or is there's no taste to these?
You have to really savor it. I mean,
just
it's
sweet?
basically it's just a marshmallow,
But
with
it's a
lot of
less
sugar on it.
tasting. Like I could taste.
There's no point.
I could
There's
taste
no
the
point.
sugar
They're
on
actually,
top of it.
I'll tell you what. They're actually better. John, for those of you who can't see, John is chewing a napkin right now to get the effect.
It's not that bad. It's pretty good.
But they're better frozen. If you put them in the freezer, which I
Really?
did, I got these like 2 packages for like $2. Otherwise, it just would have been $2. But anyways, yeah, they're better stale or frozen. Weird.
All right. Well,
Paradox.
so let's answer the question: does it hold up?
Yeah.
No,
I love this.
no, I won't go back.
No, I won't go back either. I don't
I
think it
will
holds
eat
up.
the rest of the box though, because I'm just
I will
compulsive.
too because I am hungry and
I'm gonna get
they're
the
in front
frozen
of me.
ones.
Basically,
I might have
it's in
another
front of me,
napkin.
so I will eat it. All right, and that concludes our segment. Does it hold up?
Next week on Does It Hold Up? The Nixon administration. That would actually be really funny.
Does it hold up? All right. Now we're coming to the guest segment, and I'm really excited about this next guest. John, actually, he's the one that got us hooked up for this. We have Matt Taylor, who is the author of a book called Jaws: Memories from Martha's Vineyard, and he's got a new book coming out now called Metallica: Back to the Front. Matt Taylor, thank you so much for coming on the show.
All right. So, Jaws is obviously a movie that hopefully most people have seen by now. It's, 1975 gives you, a few decades to catch up. So, luckily, most people will know what we're talking about. So basically, how did you get involved in writing a book on this subject?
Yeah, so I met a guy named Jim Beller through a mutual friend of Martha's Vineyard named Christy Henshaw. Her father had been in the movie, and Jim and I got together. He had collected a handful of photos, behind-the-scenes photos taken by locals in Martha's Vineyard, and he had this idea to do like a calendar or a book or something. And that was the beginning. That was the beginning of the whole thing with him, where it was about 2 years of talking about how to do a book and what the angle should be, and trying to figure out if there were unpublished photos, behind the scenes photos and things like that, and just lots of planning and thinking and figuring out what this book should be about. And in the meantime, I had moved back to Martha's Vineyard, where I grew up coming here summer. I live there year round now. Back then I went summers, and as a kid I was here every summer, and I knew a lot of locals who had worked on the movie, and I began just kind of knocking on doors and talking to people, and sure enough, people had lots of old photos and slides and Polaroids and things they had never done anything with. And so it became clear pretty quickly that the obvious angle would be to approach the making of the movie from the local standpoint, which had never really been done before.
Flipping through the book, it's like there's a massive amount of material in it. Like you think, when you think kind of like when people say coffee table book, you think, it's maybe got, a small amount of pages, some big photos on every page, but there's just so much material in the book. I mean, how long did it take for you to put that together? It seemed like it must have been a massive undertaking.
Yeah, it was definitely. The reason it's so big is because I wanted to fit everything in. So I made the pages really big so I could fit all the little, the captions and the pull quotes. Let's see. So after 2 years of thinking about how we should approach the book and finally kind of having an angle, I remember jumping in full-time Thanksgiving morning of 2007. And we, I pretty much wrapped in November, early December of 2010, so it was exactly 3 years.
Oh, wow.
And then we went to print the following, February, I think, and then it came out in June, so June 2011. Yeah, so from the first day until people had it in their hands, it was about 3.5 years.
Wow.
That's a long time.
Yeah, that's a good chunk of your life right there.
Yeah, it was unbelievable. I mean, it took a lot of time and effort and a lot of mental wherewithal.
Well, it's funny. Yeah. It's funny to think that the time you took to work on this book, it took the movie, shot, edited, and released within that window.
Yeah, I thought of that. I thought of that very well. I think Steven Spielberg. I think he co-wrote, directed 2 or 3 movies in the time it took me to write this book. So, I mean, that's what happens. That's what happens when you work alone. I mean, I had never done a book before, and I would sketch out all the pages like one would a storyboard.
Oh wow!
I mean, like a storyboard artist would for a film. I had everything sketched out in pencil because I didn't know how to use InDesign or anything, and I eventually brought my sister in. She was a graphic designer, and her job was to implement all of my pencil sketches and make the book come together on the computer screen from my pencil drawings. And
Oh, wow. Well, I was going to say that the language you're using in terms of like storyboarding, and you said you rapped on the book. It sounds like you have some experience with the filmmaking process yourself, or is that just the lingo you like to use?
Well, I learned a lot of the terminology making the job. no, but definitely I worked on a lot of, I was going to say indie films, but the short films, student films. I worked on a handful of student films when I went to UMass, and did a handful of short films of my own, helped other people. And so I know some of the lingo. But working on this book definitely taught me a lot more.
That's awesome.
Wow. All right. I have for the movie, they used a lot of local people for obviously all the extras, and a lot of the smaller roles were played by just local citizens on the island. So meeting all these people that have contributed to stories and images for the book. Do you have any amusing anecdotes with some of these people you've met?
So one of the producers was Bill Gilmore. He was on set every day, and he's a big part of my book. And he called me back one day after the book. I think actually the book had just gone to print, or they were about to hit print. And he called me up and he said, "I just thought of this great thing. I forgot to tell you before. He said, get your tape running. Start your tape up." And I said, "Oh man, I can't. It's already. They're about to print it in China." And he's like, "Oh, well, get your tape rolling anyway. You'll want to hear this. You'll want to have it on tape." I said, "All right, this is going to be good. I'm going to be kicking myself. All right, go ahead. Tell me the story." So he did, and he said that when they were doing looping for Jaws, like obviously a lot of the stuff out on the boat was shot out in the wind, right? And was unusable. So they did a ton of looping for that movie, and a lot of Robert Shaw's stuff had to be looped. And Robert Shaw was actually, it was time to do looping. He wasn't in the U.S. He wasn't available to go to L.A., to Universal Studios, and do the looping where, like, say, Richard Dreyfuss was and Ron Scheider was. He was in Israel. And he was in Tel Aviv, Israel. And I can't remember the film he was working on, but it was his next film right after Jaws. And so Bill Gilmore and their sound guy traveled all the way to Tel Aviv, Israel, and they set the screen up in a recording studio, and they had the what do you call it, a loop reel, I guess, all ready to go.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like a reel to reel. Right,
and they played the footage for Robert Shaw. He's got the microphone in front of him, and all those lines from out of the boat, like, "Hoopah, tie me up another barrel," and all that stuff. Yeah. That was all done in Israel. If you can imagine. Israel.
Oh, wow.
In some hotel, probably.
It's in a recording studio in Tel Aviv, Israel. And it just blew my mind. And I was so upset that Bill didn't tell me that during the times we spoke for the book. It just didn't have time, and I didn't have time to get it in there. But that just blew my mind.
That's insane.
Wow.
Hooper, you idiot! Ain't you watching Starboard and all that? Last place on earth.
Gosh, props to the sound guys on that one, because I said props to the sound designers on that one afterwards, because it sounds so much like it's actually happening in the scene.
Yeah.
I would never have guessed that was ADR.
Like all the union stuff, there was a lot of mob stuff going on. A lot of some really bad hombres from Boston, the Boston Union guys, were down here really kind of raising hell, and had everybody quite shaken up for sure.
Gosh,
oh boy,
that union stuff can be real, like showstoppers. I mean, it's just it can really throw a wrench in the machinery when it comes to that kind of.
You would think it would have been the Shark's agent that was upset about all his time in the water.
Yeah, Shark's not getting enough crafty. No chum. Did any of the local people? Did they when they? Do you know if they knew that this was a big deal when it was going on, or did they kind of just think it was another B movie? Like, what was their what was their take on it?
They thought nothing of it at all. They thought, forget B movie. They thought D movie or F movie. I mean, from what I gather, they really didn't think anything of it. They thought the whole thing was ridiculous. And, people here, the locals that were around back then, especially, weren't the types that would have been into movies. I mean, I mean, I think the only movie theater here on the island back then was open only in the summertime.
Wow.
And people didn't get there's no cable TV. People didn't get more than 3 television stations on their TVs here, and so you couldn't really watch anything.
Oh, yeah.
People are just more into outdoorsy things on the island. So something like a Hollywood production, they could care less about it. The only reason they had any involvement at all was because it paid well.
Well, that's a good reason.
And there are actually a handful of people still around that when I went to interview them, get their photos of the production, they still hadn't seen the movie. And that was in 2008, 2009. They had never. They're in the movie, or they worked on the movie, and they've never seen it.
I love that.
They just think that it doesn't. That doesn't have legs.
But they, a lot of the locals really gave the Hollywood people a tough time. They, just because they didn't understand anything about films, especially how they were shot out of sequence.
Oh yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah, that would confuse you.
Locals had a ball with that. Just they thought these people were crazy, and there was no storyline whatsoever, and they couldn't understand why they were, shooting things in this wacky order, and they just didn't understand that you put it all together in the end. They didn't really have any experience with it at all. So that
and yet they still stepped up. Obviously, I mean, if you look at the product, everyone kind of pulled together, and we have what we have because of them.
Yeah, definitely. And Lynn Murphy, for sure. I don't know if you're familiar with him from reading the book.
Yeah.
Lynn Murphy. Yeah, he just passed away about a month and a half ago.
Oh, really? Oh, I'm sorry to hear that.
Yeah, he was. Let's see. He would have been 89 or 90 this spring, and he had Alzheimer's actually, which he got 5 or 6 years ago. Right after I interviewed him, he started to kind of lose his memory, and I got to him just in the nick of time to get all of those stories, because a year later, I wouldn't have been able to do that. And but Lynn was instrumental in keeping the production afloat, especially with the sharks. Anything in the water, which is where they ran into all the problems. Lynn was just a marine mastermind. That guy could fix anything in the water, and he was right up until 5 or 6 years ago when he got sick. He really bailed them out. No pun intended. He, everything from helping them, figuring out how to solve issues pertaining to, like, what's the word, electrolysis, and like barnacles covering the underwater part of the gears and the mechanisms, just things floating properly in the water, and the shark looking right and moving right, and they just couldn't do it. And Lynn came along, and he really saved the day. And he was local. I mean, he's one of those guys that I don't even know if he saw the movie, and he told the shark for every single scene. But anyway,
insane.
Wow.
That's crazy. And I mean, I can imagine that a lot of the production, being these guys coming from Hollywood, they've done all their stuff kind of academically. They've built the sharks. They've got all these ideas for the shots, but haven't tried it out practically. And when you're actually in the water having to shoot it, it must be a totally different animal.
No pun.
Yeah, they actually. I think they actually, when they built the whole mechanism, the mechanical shark mechanism, the platform shark in California, Bob Matty did. If I'm not mistaken, I mean, if I remember correctly, I think they forgot about the corrosive effects of salt water, and they basically built it for fresh water, if I'm not mistaken.
Wow.
And they got it here, and they put it in the ocean, and immediately it just seized up, and the salt and the corrosion was just insane, and it stopped the whole show. And that was the first big thing that really just kind of ground everything to a halt.
Well,
And it contributed to a better film because of all the problems, they couldn't use the shark, so they had to develop different ways to pretend it was there, which kind of makes it scarier because it's the stuff you don't see.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was so. Like literally, while they were fixing the shark and trying to get it to work properly and look properly and behave on cue and all that, they had to keep moving forward to the production. And so that's where the barrels came into it. And, a lot of the original storyboards that called for the shark, they just replaced with the barrels. Instead of seeing the shark come up, the barrel pops up.
Mm-hmm.
So that's definitely where that came from.
That was super good. That's like one of the most memorable things I think too of that movie. It's funny. And I think that a lot of filmmakers do end up going through that. They try and solve a problem, and then it ends up being like just a better piece in the movie, a better scene, or a better just a better part of the movie in general.
Well, it's always like you show less of the monster and it leaves more to the imagination.
No. And when you watch,
had that really been done? Had that been done before Jaws? Do you think? Everybody talks about how the less you see, the scarier it is. I can't think of a film.
I seem to remember there was a movie back in the 50s that I think Spielberg made. I don't know if he took inspiration from it, but it was called like Cat People or something. It was a really bad movie. I saw it in film school, but there was there I think I'm trying to remember the producer who had this idea, but he basically played around with shadows and light and said, we don't need to show the cat people. As long as we keep them in the shadows, they're going to be scary. And it was, it was a pretty bad horror movie. But I think that was sort of, people credit that as where it started, but Spielberg really took it to the next level with Jaws and Jurassic Park. And then, other movies, they did something similar.
I'm trying to think of another time that Spielberg really used that method. I'm thinking of, like you said, Jurassic Park. I'm thinking of the cup of water in the Jeep, and you see it begin to shake.
Oh yeah, that's great.
Yeah.
You hear the footsteps coming and and the ripples in the water. That's like classic Spielberg, right?
Well, and surprisingly, it didn't seem to they may not have learned their lesson from Jaws and Jurassic Park either, because they had big problems with the T-Rex when it was raining. It would soak up all the water and it would start shaking, and they would have to come in and dry it off. There's always seems to like Jordan said, it always seems to once you test this stuff in the field, once you actually need it to work, it just seems to break down.
That's a good story.
Well, it must have been hard for the locals too, because I remember reading somewhere that the original production schedule, I think, was supposed to be like 50 days, which is a lot for a feature film. Well, maybe not for a Hollywood blockbuster, but it ended up being like twice the budget and then 3 times the amount of shoot days that they had scheduled or something. I mean, it must have shut down a lot of things for the locals.
Yeah, the local selectmen stipulated very clearly that they had to be out by, I guess it was July 1st.
Oh, wow.
Because of, the summer people come to Martha's Vineyard, and it would have been impossible to have all the, the generators, and trucks, and trailers, and movie people around everywhere, especially on the beaches. So they committed, Universal committed to being out of here, off the island by, like I say, I think it was July 1st. And
wow.
Yeah, I mean, it turned in. They didn't even leave till the end of September, I think.
Oh gosh, shooting in the water.
They worked. Here's how they got around that, though. They decided they were originally going to shoot all the stuff out on the Orca first, I believe, if I remember correctly, and then because that was early May, and it would have been too cold for people to go in the water and film the beach, scenes. And when they found out they had to be gone by July 1st, for whatever reason, they backed everything up and they flipped it around, and so all the beach scenes were shot in May and early June. So that's why everybody talks about how cold it was when they went into the water to pretend it was July 4th.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
And so when July 1st came along, the production would no longer be shooting on land, and they wouldn't be in anybody's way, and they were strictly out on the water. And so that's why they did it that way.
Wow.
Otherwise, they would have gotten into big trouble with the town. But when you hear local people talk about how damn cold the water was, that's because it was like May 5th, May 10th, or whatever, and the water doesn't even begin to heat up until mid-July. So it was really frigid.
Oh, wow. That must have been miserable doing those scenes. Yeah. Speaking of, they're shooting in the water. I mean, what you live in Martha's Vineyard. I mean, how much of a problem are actual sharks?
I would think non-existent.
When I was a kid, up until recently, fishermen were talking about how you had to go 10 miles offshore to find makos and blue sharks.
Yeah.
And once you got out that far, they were in abundance, but they would never come towards shore. Now we have this thing where the seals have all come back.
Oh,
and I don't know if you guys are familiar with Cape Cod at all, but Cape Cod is now completely overrun with seals.
Oh, wow.
Oh,
and I guess, from what I gathered, they would have been here back around the Indian times, right before European colonization, but they were all killed and whatnot. So the sharks don't know. Well, you know what follows seals, right? The great whites.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And so and there's a huge great white population now off Martha's Vineyard, Nantucket, and Cape Cod, and they come right up the shore. It's really kind of scary.
Wow.
And they have they tag 18-footers every year. I'm not sure where they go for the winter, but they come back in May and June when the seals come back. And you can look at aerial footage of Cape Cod now, taken right off the shore, and there are all these big black shadows in the water. You know what they are.
Oh my gosh. It's like the movie was prophetic.
Not too many shark attacks, I bet.
Like nature imitating art.
Yeah, exactly. Let's talk about your new book that you have out right now, the Metallica Back to the Front. I mean, it seems like a strange jump from writing a book about Jaws to putting together a book about Metallica. I mean, what drove you to put that project together?
Well, first of all, my life has been one strange jump after the other for 40 years, so very strange for me. But it's like ADD or something. I don't know. one weird thing to the other. I think Bigfoot's my next topic.
That would be a good one.
We'll have you back on.
Definitely love it. What prompted me to go into Metallica?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, as a kid, I loved Jaws. As a kid, and I mean, I was obsessed with it, more obsessed with the making, given where I spent every summer. And as a teenager, I mean, there were very few things I loved at that age. Metallica was one of them. This is like 1985, 86, 87, and I was thinking a lot about what my next book should be. I was actually approached by J.J. Abrams in 2012. He was a big fan of the Jaws book, and he wanted me to do a Star Trek book, a big coffee table book on the making of Into Darkness.
That's cool.
Oh, wow.
And we were going through all the preliminary stages of that, and all of a sudden the project just got dropped, and I couldn't understand why at first. It was very mysterious, and come to find out, it was because Star Wars came along for him, and I think they were just dropping all these peripheral Star Trek projects, and it was sort of like Trek, what? It was just everything was all about Star Wars, and so that got shelved or axed or whatever.
Well, that's too bad.
Just really kind of, and I was really pulling my hair out, thinking, what am I going to do next? I want to do something I'm passionate about, because obviously these things take 2 or 3 years, like Jaws did. It takes a lot of time and effort, and it's just me,
Yeah.
I pretty much do everything: interviews, compiling the photos, all the scanning, all the editing, and what am I going to do? What can I dedicate myself to? What means that much to me that I can give 2 years of my life to? And my mind kept going back to Metallica, early Metallica, from the early 80s. And 1985, 86 was kind of like their breakout period. And a lot of people haven't documented that time frame because it's when their bass player was killed, their original bass player. So a lot of people sidestepped that time frame because he was killed on the tour that I ended up writing about. And the people always seem to or tend to remember that tour because, for the accident. And so I thought it was time that somebody did some kind of project to center on the happy times of 1986 and not just the accident. That's all you ever hear about. In terms of them just beginning to break out. You hear about the accident and Cliff Burton dying. And I thought, well, let's do a book that celebrates all the good times from that year and them really kind of making it to the next level. And so I approached them about it, and I think Lars Ulrich had already known about the Jaws book, where he had a copy or something, and they were familiar with the book anyhow, and they liked the idea, and I began having meetings with their management, and they said, we want you to do a book just like Jaws. And so I jumped in, and gosh, when did I start? It was like winter of 2014, and I finished 2016 a year ago, exactly a year ago. So it was 1 year shorter than Jaws. Probably could have used the extra year, but I didn't have it. And so that came out this past September. We did the trade edition and also the limited edition, like the Jaws book. So we have the two.
So the limited edition for the Jaws book, I think, comes with a 1-inch piece of the actual orca, right?
Correct. Yeah.
Does the Metallica? Okay. And does the Metallica book have something like that as well, like a little extra that you could get with it?
Right. Yeah, it comes with a big slipcase, and when you open it, there's a portfolio on one side that actually has the guys' embossed signatures, and there's a piece of an original 1985/86 Metallica road case. There's a picture of in the slipcase.
Oh, wow.
Pretty cool collection. The book is strictly about the 1985-86 tour, which is, like I say, which is like their breakthrough tour when their bass player was killed. It's about those 2 years strictly. And so this is a road case they found in their warehouse. It was from that tour. And so we cut it up into little pieces, and we had them glued into the portfolio. And it looks really cool. And anyway, it comes in this big deluxe box and packaging and all that. And we've got about 100 of those left.
Yeah.
And if you were 14, 15, 16 years old in the mid to late 80s, like when I was, and you were into hard rock or heavy metal, Metallica was just it. And then because they changed and sort of became a different band for a long time, and now they're kind of back to their old style, they've kind of found their way back into the old sound again. But when I started this book, that era of the band was so nostalgic, and just like when I started the Jaws book, that material and the topic was so nostalgic, right? Because I was reaching back into stuff I loved as a kid or as a teenager, in the case of Metallica. So I just think that, well, like Jaws, their music is timeless, I think. It doesn't fit into any specific era. And, the word metal is in their title, but it's not really metal all the time. And I think, they gain a lot of fans for every album. They lose fans. People are always discovering them every time, There are millions of people who just like the 80s Metallica. I'm sure there are millions more who love the 90s Metallica. And, I'm sure a lot of the old fans now are returning back to the fold because they're sort of getting back to their old style and their old sound. And I don't know, I can just speak for myself in saying that the early stuff from the 80s really touched me and grabbed me. And when I decided to do the book, it was based on a real sense of, it was a very powerful feeling of nostalgia and passion for that era of the band. So
it's crazy to think that the band could be together that long. It's like we think of the Beatles, and their body of work was just a few albums or whatever in a few years, and it's like a band like Metallica has such a huge body of work and has never stopped. It's all they've known their entire lives is being in that band.
That's true. They were 17 and Lars Ulrich was 17 when he started Metallica, and James Hetfield was 18.
Oh, wow.
And it just happened immediately for them. There was almost no, a lot of bands go years kind of doing the starving artist and starving musician thing, and they're just waiting for that break. But these guys are so good and so out of the box that within months of starting and putting the band together, they had a record deal, and they were doing it. They were just up and running. By 21, 22, they were millionaires. It's just
wow,
crazy.
It's a pretty good success story.
And, well, where could people find this book right now? You said that it's a limited edition. There's only 100 copies left. Where would they go to order this if they want to get a copy?
Well, so the limited edition is, so we have the trade edition, which is available everywhere. It's Amazon, Barnes & Noble, whatever.
Okay.
The limited edition you can see on www.moonrisemedia.net.
Okay, cool. Listeners, if you're a big Metallica fan, swipe those up soon because they're not going to be around forever.
That's it.
They look great on the shelf next to the Jaws book. They're the same size, same packaging.
Oh, nice. That's really cool.
What's next to be on that shelf? So you've got Metallica, under your belt now. You released that last fall. Do you have anything on the horizon?
Yeah, I'm writing a graphic novel right now. It's kind of like World War II sci-fi horror.
Oh, wow.
Cool.
It's a neat combo.
Definitely a lifelong Bigfoot enthusiast. I'd like to do some kind of big coffee table book on, Bigfoot sightings in the U.S. through the centuries. Going back to the
That would be
Indians.
pretty awesome.
Basically, a big coffee table book chronicle of all the stuff that's happened through the centuries, and I think it'd be fun. It's another thing, nostalgia will definitely play a role in that.
Definitely.
All those Bigfoot films from the 70s, I just, worshipped as a kid. Pretty much Jaws and like Legend of Boggy Creek. I mean, that movie just blew my mind.
Great idea.
My wife and I were talking about this a while ago. That there needs to be a Bigfoot movie now, because it's like they've brought back in recent years at least all the old monsters, vampires and werewolves and I don't know,
Zombies.
Frankenstein, zombies.
Yeah.
Now we got to have Bigfoot back.
Yeah.
You know the big thing about a lot of these Bigfoot films, though, they're trying to make Bigfoot scary, and they're missing the point. Bigfoot, I don't think Bigfoot is supposed to be scary. It's supposed to be spooky.
Yeah, that's
There's
true.
a big difference between Bigfoot's not like horror movie material.
Yeah.
He's spooky and he's eerie. It's creepy. You know what I mean? That's a whole different thing than it's supposed to make the hair raise up on the back, on the hair in your arms raise up, or give you that icy chill down your spine. It's not supposed to scare you. I don't think that's the thing that a lot of people who are making these new movies about Bigfoot are forgetting or not realizing at all.
Yeah, that makes
Not
sense.
Scary.
Well, maybe they could take some cues from. Jaws. The Jaws shark obviously is scary, but in the way that it's treated, it's kind of creepy.
It's all about what's under the water.
Yeah,
you don't know.
Yeah.
You don't see, and Bigfoot is never fully seen in his full form, really ever. Or at least there's no proof of it, like hard proof of him completely in his form, and that's what makes it unsettling. It's like, is he there? Is he not? How big is he?
Or like as a kid, I can't tell you how many hours I spent sitting trying to imagine what if this thing is real. What do they really look like? There's that, obviously that famous Patterson-Gimlin footage.
Oh yeah,
Where the creature is walking, then kind of turns right with his arms swinging, and it looks right at the camera. Then people always use that still frame, right?
Yeah,
and I mean. That still frame captured my imagination. Like, I can't even tell you, back in the 70s as a little kid, holy mackerel, man, that just did it for me. That and Jaws, like that. That one shot, that one image fueled a lifetime of creativity, I think, for me.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Well, we're going to have to do a comparison between Jaws and Legend of Boggy Creek. That sounds like a good
do it, man.
night. Yeah, get some popcorn and beer and have at it.
Make an evening of it.
Definitely watch it. Watch the first half. It gets a little bit long and tedious. Watch even the first half hour or first 45 minutes. And it is really, really cool. And you might even see some similarities between it and Jaws. I'd be interested to know if you do, or if you catch them, because they're definitely there.
All right.
Yeah, for sure.
Definitely. Well, thank you so much, Matt, for coming on and talking with us about Jaws and Metallica and Bigfoot and everything. We'll have to have you back on as you work on future projects.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Well, thanks, John, for getting Matt for us. That was that was a neat little treat. That was a fun little treat, especially for Jaws fans.
Yeah, and any excuse to talk to someone about Jaws, and he just happened to be a guy who wrote a book on the subject, so it's right up my alley.
We'll have to have him back on when he does some more projects. And let's take a moment to thank our listeners for supporting the podcast by subscribing and downloading the show and also following us on the social media. But we have officially launched our Patreon page. So if you like the show and you want to help us out, you could go to patreon.com/Gent Scofflaw And there are some different tiers we put in there. For listeners that want to support the show on a per episode basis. So go to the Patreon page, check out some of those perks. We have some stuff like you can get a special thanks on the live show, your name mentioned on the show. We'll have live monthly video hangouts, which will basically just be the show, but as a hangout where we'll discuss different things. And also we'll have an additional monthly movie review podcast where we pick a scofflaw or gentleman-esque movie and we get together and talk about it and review it and go in depth on it because we don't always have time to do that on all the episodes. We would just be a whole movie podcast, which we're Renaissance men. We're not just all about movies, but we're mostly about movies. And yes, if you get a chance, leave us a review on iTunes, and you can leave us listener voicemail at man81scoff with 2 Fs. And John is laughing because apparently I screwed something up.
We screwed everything
up. And next week we're going to have Douglas Smythe and Matt Pisarsik. They put together the Big Shave West. You guys, what's the matter with you guys?
No. John is having a laughing attack up in Canada. I'm being triggered by this, and we're throwing you off. So please continue on with the Patreon.
Well, we're gonna be talking about wet shaving and the Big Shave West, which is like the Comic-Con of men's grooming. So that should be fun. And we'll see you next week, guys.
See ya.
Bye.
Captain says his ice on the river. We ain't getting home if we don't break through. So damn cold, I can't help but shiver. Rise and shine, we got work to do.